Hello, everybody. Mike Westphal here, McDonald Garden Center. Give us some time to make sure we're running. All right. Hello, everybody. Mike Westphal here at McDonald Garden Center. We're just going to give it maybe a minute to just make sure everybody's in that wants to watch. So just want to say hello. Hope you are all doing well and being safe. We're very excited to be able to provide these seminars to you through Facebook Live. So we're very excited about that. We're going to continue to do this throughout the year. We're really excited about this. We'll do as many as we possibly can. Right now, what we've got scheduled, just so you know what's coming up, April 10th, we'll be doing gardening for small spaces. And I'll be talking about how you can do gardening in different small spaces on your patio, deck, porch, and I'll also plant up a container. So that'll be exciting. April 15th, next week on Wednesday, we'll do how to plant a butterfly garden. So we'll talk about different types of plants, host plants, nectar plants, which butterflies to attract, which one, and then bees, hummingbirds, all the pollinators. We'll talk about that. It'll be a very exciting conversation that we'll have then. And then on April 17th, we'll be doing birding 101. So just the basics on birding. A lot of us are at home, working from home, and it's just nice to be able to look out the window and see the birds actively in your yard. So again, thank you for joining us. Today we are talking about growing your own vegetables, growing your own food, and I'll be talking about a lot of different things, covering kind of all the basics again, just so you're successful this year if you're planning on growing your own food. A little history about us. We've been in Hampton Roads for 75 years. So we've been locally owned small business. We're very excited to be in this area for this long. We know a lot about this area. We know a lot about our soil. We'll talk about that a little bit. We know a lot about what types of vegetables to grow and when to plant them, and we'll cover all of those basics here in this class. So there's nothing so specifically about edible plants in general, growing your own food. There's nothing better and more rewarding than going out in your yard and picking and harvesting something and eating it. There's nothing better than a tomato right off the vine that you've grown yourself. So we're definitely encouraging that. We know a lot of people are at home, and so we want you to get out in your yard. It's a healthy place to be. Stay around your home, or work in your yard, and we'll talk about small spaces too. If you don't have a yard, we'll talk about patios and decks and how to grow food indoors too. So continue to stick with us, and then if you've got questions, feel free to throw those questions out there. I'm a little bit kind of further back than I normally am from the computer screen, so as soon as I get done kind of talking, I'll come around and I'll look at the questions and answers and try and answer them. If I can't do that, then I'll spend a little bit of time after this is over and answer all your questions online. So thank you again for joining, and we'll get started on growing your own food. So the first thing that I always like to talk about is it's easy. A lot of people say it's easy. It is very easy to grow your own food. They're very quick growers. I mean, think about a tomato plant. Tomato plants get 5 to 6 feet high in one season. It's very easy to grow, but sometimes you'll make mistakes, and that's okay. Even the experts make mistakes. I've had many times where I've made a mistake or something didn't work for me, and I learned from those experiences. And so right now is a great time to realize that failure can happen. It's okay. We're here to help you be more successful, so ask us questions. Feel free to ask us questions. Call in, come in, talk to us. We've been doing it for a long time. A lot of us have grown our own vegetables. We've been in Hampton Roads for 75 years, so we know a lot about this. So ask us questions. Ask your neighbors, ask your friends, ask your family members. Maybe you have your father or your father-in-law or an uncle or somebody in your family has grown vegetables before or edibles in general, and they might have some success stories to tell you. That's the best way to kind of learn how to do this, and just realize that sometimes mistakes are going to happen. It's okay. Learn from them and try something different, and we're here to help. So then the next thing I want to talk about is planning. So planning is probably one of the most important things. I talk about this all the time. Make sure you're growing what you actually are going to eat. There's a lot of people I know the first time that I ever did tomato plants, I think I planted 12 or 15 tomato plants. I had too much. So it's a good idea to kind of think through that. Take a minute and plan. There's no rush. You can take your time, and we can help you kind of stagger this off or stage it off into stages where you don't feel like you've got to get it all done in one weekend. If you want to do it all in one weekend, we can help you do that. If you want to, take your time and kind of do it as a process, we can help you with that as well. But just take a minute, sit down. You might even take a piece of paper and just kind of draw out a diagram or just an overhead drawing of the space that you're planting in. And then just kind of think about, okay, I want 2 tomato plants, and then ask us questions. How many tomatoes do you expect to get off a plant? How many eggplants will I get? How many peppers will I get? And those are good questions to ask because, you won't know until you ask or grow it. So once you grow it, again, sometimes it happens. I did it. You plant way too much, and then you've got way too much. So we want to encourage just a little bit of time to plan and prepare and make sure that you're growing enough food for your family or for yourself, but not too much so that you're wasting anything and wasting your time and effort. So plan. Just take a little bit of time to plan. Think about your space. So what kind of space are you planting in? Are you going to do it in the ground? Are you going to do it in containers? Are you going to do it in an earth box? Raised beds? Anything. There's a lot of different options out there. So think about that space that you're going to be using, because we'll ask those questions. If you say, hey, I want 12 tomatoes, and you've got a 4x4 raised bed, we might say, hey, think about, okay, maybe doing just 1 or 2 tomatoes in that space so you've got some other room to do other things. So think about your space. Think about the frost date. Frost date is one of the most important things. I will mention it many, many times as we kind of discuss different types of plants and when to plant them. But frost date is very important. The frost date here in Virginia Beach is about April 10th. So that's coming up. That's like this weekend. So April 10th is our frost date. It's a good date to kind of remember. If you want to make it easy, I always say April 15th and November 15th. April 15th, tax day. November 15th, election day. So those are 2 easy dates to remember. So that's our spring frost date. Once we get past April 10th, then we're pretty clear to not get a frost at night. And that's what can damage some of these tender plants is a frost at night. And frost occurs when the temperature at night is below 40 and we don't have any clouds. It's a clear sky and there's no wind, and then we get a frost. And so you want to be prepared and just kind of think about that, especially as we talk about some seed growing and starting plants indoors. You want to know your frost date. And then our first frost will come in the fall, around November 15th, November 10th, somewhere in that time frame. So knowing those dates really helps you plan and prepare your garden. So keep those in mind. Okay, so then location. Location. That's what we're taught in business school, and that's what we're taught even when gardening, is think about the location that you're going to be growing in. So there's lots of different options here. Raised beds, really popular. Raised beds, the idea behind a raised bed is you get less weed issues, get less pest issues. It keeps it a little bit higher up for some of those other animals that you might have. The soil is really the most important thing there, because in a raised bed, what you're doing is you are making your own soil to put in there. Whether it's a mix of compost and perlite and peat moss. I did a webinar, an online seminar last Friday all about soil. So I'm not going to go too in depth. If you're wondering about soil, watch that. Great information in there. A lot of information. I'll touch on some basics here. But that's what's really cool about raised beds is you're making your own mix for your raised beds. Now you can use just a straight raised bed mix that has all of the ingredients in it. You can use a potting soil in a raised bed. That's fine. Or you can make your own. So if you've got 12 raised beds and you need a lot of soil, you might think about bulk. What you want to do is have your measurements, know your length, your width, and then how high you need to make it. So if you've got a 4x4 raised bed that's 16 inches high, tell us that information. We can help you figure out exactly how much soil you need. So don't let that bog you down. We can help you with that. But that's what's really cool about raised bed. Raised beds, the soil is up in the air too. And what that means is it's going to warm up faster, so usually you can get a little bit of a head start than those people that are growing directly in the ground. But raised beds are really cool. Now there's also containers. You can grow in a ceramic pot, plastic pot, a clay pot. You can grow in a lot of different things. So if you've got a small space, a little deck, a little patio, and you want to grow some edible plants, you can do it with just a pot. You can also do it with, this is one of my favorite containers out there for planting. This is called a earth box. Earth boxes are really cool. These were designed by farmers. So it's basically, what it's going to do is it's going to give you a good space to grow in. It's a nice large container. You can grow two tomatoes in here, 2 or 3 peppers in here. You can grow herbs in here, strawberries. I mean, the list is endless of what you can grow in this box. But what is really cool is it's a kit. It comes with everything that you need. It's got this great screen down in the bottom, a tube that comes up. You just need to buy soil and plants and sun. That's all you need. You don't have to buy the sun, but you buy your soil, your plants, and then you just put it in a sunny location, and It's really, really easy. It's got all the fertilizer in here in this kit. It's got the cover on top that helps warm up the soil. But it's a really cool way of growing in a small space, and you can get huge yields, huge harvests out of this little box. So really cool idea. We carry these at our year-round locations, so you can come and check those out. But then growing in the ground. So again, talking about location, if you want to grow in your ground soil, great idea. If you want to take a plot of land, a plot of your landscape, somewhere in the backyard, front yard. We'll talk about sunlight here in a minute. But think about that. And growing in the ground is a great way of growing vegetables. It gives you a nice stable area. You can usually get a larger space to grow a little bit more if you want to do more. And it doesn't cost anything to do it. I mean, really, you're just opening up some area. You're clearing it off. You're clearing off grass, weeds. Maybe it's an old mulched area. Maybe it's got some old debris in it. But you can clear it up, and then we can just add some soil amendments to it and till that in or work it in as we plant everything. And then that's going to be a great way to grow too. So think about the location of where you want to grow. All right, and then also we'll touch on soil real quick. So soil real quick, basics. I don't want to go into it in great detail because I already did that for about 30, 45 minutes last week. So check that out, really great information. But soil amendment is very, very important. So if you're growing in the ground, then our soil in this area is very clay-based typically, which is a very thick soil. So what we're going to recommend there is amending it with a compost, McDonald compost. We've got mushroom compost. We've got lots of different types of compost. We've got cow manure. We've got land and sea, McGill compost. We've got lots and lots of different types of compost that you can use to amend your soil. But what that's going to do is add organic matter. And organic matter is what makes that nice, fertile, loamy looking soil. It's really, really nice. And it fluffens it up and it makes it a little bit lighter. Perlite is going to be the other amendment that we're going to recommend a lot. Perlite are those little white styrofoamy things that you see in potting soils. Perlite is a great way to break up your soil, allow water penetration down into the soil, allow fertilizer and nutrients to get down there, and oxygen too. So we want to open up the soil, and perlite helps with that. Knowing your soil really will help us answer some questions. If you've got sandy soil, then we might recommend peat moss. Peat moss helps hold in moisture. So knowing your soil really helps. Soil amendments are super, super important. And then pH. So before I get into pH, I'll talk about containers real quick. If you're growing in containers in a pot, a ceramic pot, a clay pot, plastic pot, whatever it might be, an earth box, then you want to use a potting soil. And so here we've got our McDonald Garden Center potting soil. We've got it in a natural and an organic, and we've got it in an all-purpose. It's always a great deal. It's normally $9.99, but it's always a great deal. Buy two, get one free. So you can always get a great deal. You can get 3 cubic feet for $20. It's a great deal, and it's a great soil to grow in. Natural and organic holds a little bit more moisture, great for outside, but all-purpose is a little bit more on the professional side, and it doesn't hold quite as much moisture, but depending on the plant, again, talk to us, let us know what you're growing. We can kind of help determine which potting soil might be better for you in what you're growing. So always ask some questions. Okay, so then pH. pH is very, very important. All that pH really does, whenever you get a pH test, we do them for free. If you're a Garden Rewards member, you can just bring in a small sample of soil to our year-round locations here in Virginia Beach, and we can do a free soil test for you and get your pH. And pH is what pH does. So when you're in the right pH range, then the plants can get the nutrients out of the soil and your fertilizer. That's the most important thing. People fertilize a lot throughout the season. I'm going to talk about fertilizer. But we fertilize a lot, and if your pH is way out of range of where it's supposed to be, say you're growing tomatoes. Tomatoes like a 6.5 to 7. And you're in a 5.5, you're only going to get 40 to 50% of the benefits of your fertilizer. It's only going to be able to, the plant cannot unlock the potential of the soil and get the fertilizer out of it. So that's all that pH really does. pH typically in this area is at about 5.5. It's very low. So if you're growing in your soil, you got oak trees, pine trees, maple trees in the area, you most likely have acidic soil. And so we want to raise that pH. And you can use lime, but we've also got another product called Magical. Magical is a great fast-acting lime. It's calcium derived. And what's really cool about Magical is calcium is super important when you're growing tomatoes, peppers, squash. If you've ever gotten that black spot on the underside of your tomato, that comes from calcium-deprived soil. And so we want to encourage more calcium, and that's what you'll get from Magical. So not only will it change your pH and do it quickly, which a lot of us are rearing up to get out there and plant our vegetables. So Magical might be a great time to try that, or it may be a great product for you to try. Dolomitic lime is great. It's going to last a little bit longer, but Dolomitic lime takes a lot longer to change your pH. So thinking about different types of areas, and maybe in the fall, if you're not going to plant anything, great time to get your pH right for a longer time frame. Magical, real quick, real fast acting, going to change your pH and give you lots of calcium. So that's what pH does. Again, we have little testers that you can buy to do them at home, but we do them for free here. We do them right on the spot if we're available to do that. All we need is a little plastic bag with a couple spoonfuls of your soil, and we'll test it right there, and you'll get to know what you need. So pH is important. All right, so sun. So when we're talking about location still, when you're talking about location, you want to find the sunniest possible spot. Most of your edible plants are going to want 6 hours of sunlight or more. So think about that when you're dealing with your location. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we talk about specific plants. But for example, peppers. Peppers definitely need the most amount of sunlight that you can get it. So think about that. Tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, all your summer vegetables are going to love the sun. So think about that when you're planning your location. If you get a little bit of shade, so let's say 6 hours of sunlight. I've grown vegetable gardens, and I've done them pretty well when I've gotten sunlight from sun up to about 3 o'clock. So I got some late afternoon shade. Was pretty successful with that. Now peppers, I needed to get a little bit more into sunlight, so I had to move them a little bit to get them a little bit more exposure to the sunlight during the day. So think about your sunlight. Think about your north, south, east, west. Sun rises in the east, sets in the west. So you got to know that, and then think about where your plants are going to be placed. Taller plants, you don't want blocking other plants. So if you're going to grow corn or tomatoes, these plants are beans on poles. And we'll talk about all of this in a minute here. But if you're going to be growing any of those things, think about the location of where those are going to go in your garden, because you don't want to shade the other plants. You want to allow all the plants the sunlight. So think about your location. We've all got smartphones now. You can actually get a compass on your phone, so you can stand there in your yard and move your phone around and determine your true north and south and your east and west to know where the sunlight's going to go. Or just walk out there and look at it periodically throughout the day. You'll be able to see where the sunlight is. So watch your sun, know where the sun is, and try and get your vegetables and edible plants in general as much sun as you can get them. All right, so now we're going to talk about seeds versus starter plants. A lot of people asking those questions right now. It's a very good question. Should I grow from seed, or should I grow from one of our starter plants? So growing from a small plant like this, the benefits of growing from this is I know I've got my tomato or my eggplant or my pepper. I know that I've got it. It's here. It's growing. It's germinated. I'm going to go plant it. I only know that I need 2 of them. So let's say I know that I only need 2 tomato plants. I love to grow tomatoes. I just want to grow 2 this year. You can just buy 2. If you buy a pack of seeds, you're going to have a lot of seeds left over, and maybe you don't need to grow all of those. Now, seeds are a little bit more economical, so seeds are a great way to go too. However, you still have to go through the process of getting them to germinate. You've got to buy the seed starter soil. You've got to do a lot of different steps there to get them to the point where you're going to put them in the ground. Direct sowing is possible. You can definitely direct sow seeds. That is not a problem. Having a nice, very, very light mixture of soil, and we can help you with that as well. But you can make your soil nice and light and plant your seeds in direct sow. Again, timing is important there. Ask us some questions. Can I direct sow tomatoes right now? Can I direct sow peppers or squash or zucchini or whatever it might be that you're trying to grow? If you're growing it from seed, it's doable. I'm not saying don't do it. We love seeds. Seeds are very economical. It's a great way to go. And kids love to see the seeds germinate and grow, and doing them inside and starting them before your frost date if you want to get a jump. It's a great way of doing it. April 10th is our frost date, so you're going to start your tomatoes probably 2 to 3 weeks before that, and then they're going to germinate, and then you can take them outside. Always, when you're growing seeds inside, that's probably my best advice I can give you with seed germination and seed growing, is don't just take your transplants, your new seedlings, directly out into the sunlight. They're not used to that. If you're growing them indoors and starting them indoors, then acclimate them to those temperature ranges and acclimate them to that sunlight. So take them out, put them in a little bit of shade, bring them in if it's going to be a cool night, get them used to it. It's called hardening the plant off. So you're hardening the plant off. You're making it used to those outside winds and temperatures and temperature fluctuations and different types of sunlight. So work them out there, ease them out there for a week. Make sure that they're acclimated before you go and plant them. and make sure you're past the frost date of April 10th, because you don't want your tender little seedlings out there, and then all of a sudden we get frost. So knowing your frost date, super important. So growing from seed or starter plant, it's up to you. We'll help you do either one. We have lots of starter plants, of course, that you can choose from, and you can sometimes get packs. Packs will come in a 4-pack, so you get 4 little plants in a pack, but you're going to get a much better selection in our 4-inch. We've got our Chef Jeff vegetables, and then we've got a ton of different herbs too. I'm going to talk about herbs as well. So there's a lot of different herbs. These are great starter sizes, great way to kind of start your vegetable garden, your herb garden early. We've got loads of these, lots of different varieties, and you're going to get some really well-tested varieties too. Things that we know that are proven to work very, very well in this area. Our buyers have worked with growers and have worked in this area for a long time and know what grows very well. So we're not going to sell you something that we don't know if it's got proven results. So we spend a lot of time going out there and hand-picking all of these different types of plants and all these different types of soils and amendments and fertilizers, so you can trust us that we put in our due diligence to make sure you're going to be successful. All right, so seeds versus plants. Decide what's better for you. Decide how much you want to do. If you're going to do seeds, a lot of times I recommend seeds for like lettuces and spinaches, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit, because it's very easy to grow and you kind of want a little bit more of that typically. They don't take up a lot of space. Tomatoes, I usually grow from plants just because I know that I can buy 2 or 3 or 4, and I'm not going to spend a ton of money, and they're going to be easy and they're going to grow very well for me. So think about that. Seeds versus plants, up to you. We'll help you either way you decide to go. All right, so now the next step. We've got our plants in the ground. We've amended our soil. We've got our raised beds. We've got everything set up. We've got our containers. We've got our in-ground bed set up. We've either grown from seed or we've got our plants and we're planted and we're sitting there waiting and saying, what do we do now? Watering. Watering is one of the #1 questions that we always get, how to water plants. In general, the best advice that I can give anybody is water more, less often. Going out there and giving it a quick water in the middle part of the day is not going to help it much. You want to water it really, really well and let it dry out. So I'll explain that a little bit more. But watering is super important. So here's the #1 tip. Water in the morning, never in the evening. Dampness and darkness will cause fungus. So we don't want to water in the evening. Plants don't need moisture at night. They need it when the sun is out and when the soil is actively drying out. They need it when they're growing. They're not growing at night. So when the sun is gone, they don't need a lot of moisture. Now, if your plants are really, really wilted when you get home and you feel like you need to give them a little bit of drink, okay, do it sparingly. Don't do it very often. Try and water in the morning. It's the best way to get the best success rate out of your herbs, veggies, fruits, all of them. Any plant, water in the morning, not at night. Where do plants need water? They need it in the root system. They don't want it on their leaves. So rainwater is different than tap water. Rainwater is nature's way of helping us out. So rainwater is great. You don't have to worry about that. When it rains, there's a good watering. Checking for rain, you also can use a rain gauge. These days with our smartphones and with all the technology out there and the ability to go out there and see right there, there's data right there on your phone telling you how much rain you got. But a rain gauge is a great way just to walk out there and say, we only got 1/4 of an inch of rain last night. It seemed like it was a lot more, but it really wasn't that much. So a rain gauge might be a good little trick to use. You also can get a moisture meter, so trying to check your moisture. We have this great meter. It's a moisture meter, a light meter, and a pH meter. So here's a kind of 3-in-1 tool. That's a really useful tool to use when checking pH, checking if your soil is moist and needs water, and also checking that light that I was talking about. Hey, it's 4 o'clock. Do I actually have as much light as I think I do? It's a great little test here. So you can also pick one of those up. So back to watering. Water the root system, not the leaves. So if you've got a large bed and you've always done a sprinkler system over the top of it and you've had success with it, okay. But typically what happens in this area, especially with cucumbers, squash, zucchini, if you've ever grown anything with that kind of fuzzy leaf and you spray them over the top with water, you're going to get powdery mildew in this area. Once that heat and that humidity sets in and you've got moisture on the leaves for a long period of time because we're constantly overhead watering them, then you're going to get disease and fungus issues, and powdery mildew is one of the worst ones in this area. So if you have to use an overhead sprinkler system, you might think about a preventative measure to prevent the fungus from getting in there. And we've got some great solutions. If you ever have powdery mildew or if you've experienced it in the past, but you got to use overhead watering, come and talk to us and we can get you something so you're more preventative rather than curative. Always better to say, hey, I had this problem last year, I don't want to experience it this year, so give me something to prevent it, and that'll always help you. And again, watering the root system is the best way to go. Plants need moisture in their root system, not on their leaves. So always water the root system. Wilting. Wilting does not always mean that the plant needs to be watered. A lot of times plants protect themselves. If a plant is too hot, and when we start to get into those 95, 100-degree days in the middle of summer, and a plant folds its leaves up and hangs over and wilts, that's natural. It's doing that to protect itself. So it's not doing that necessarily because it needs water. Another one of the handiest tools you have is your own hand and your finger. And you can check the soil moisture. So if you want to just dig a little hole every once in a while nearby your plants, if that soil is still moist down there 3, 4 inches down, 2, 3 inches down, then you're okay. The plant is wilting to protect itself. Plants will also wilt if there's too much water. So if it's in a really, really wet location and it's really having a hard time drying out, those plants are going to wilt and sag. If a plant browns and is crispy, it's too dry. If a plant goes black and is kind of wet and soggy still on the leaf, it's too much moisture. But wilting can mean lots of different things. And you can check all of that by looking at your soil or using that handy moisture meter. But it's good to know your moisture in the soil and how much is in there and determine if your plant really needs to be watered or not. If it's a little wilty going into nightfall, wait till the morning. And so what I kind of started with was water deep, less often. That's my best advice. I'm talking about trees, shrubs, perennials, annuals. When you want to water deep, less often. And so when you go out there with the hose and just kind of stand there and spray down the soil a little bit, that's probably not enough water. We need to get the water down 2, 3, 4, or 5 inches down deep into the soil. So I always love my handy tool of this watering wand. Watering wands are awesome. They're so easy. We've done a watering video. You should check it out. It talks about this tool right here. It's one of our favorites. If you've ever walked around our garden center and you've seen us watering, guess what we're using? We're using this. It's the best tool. It's got an on and off valve, so it's really easy to control the flow. It's got this great shower head on the top, so it's not a full-blown blast of water coming out. But this is really easy. It saves your back too, because you can go and reach down and put it right at the root system of the plants rather than spraying it over the top. So it's real easy to get right to the source of the root system. You can also lay it down. So you can lay it down on the soil. If you've got some bigger plants and you need to get a nice deep watering, lay it down on a plant, let it water for 5 minutes, and then go do some weeding, go do some other things, some prunings, and then come back and move it to the next plant. That's the best way to get a deep watering. So what happens when you water really, really deep and less often is in that time frame, that 3 to 4 day time frame, where the soil is drying out, the roots are going to search for water. So that's kind of the best way to describe it, is to get your root system to really develop and get deep, make it look for some water. If you have a sprinkler system or a watering system set up on a timer and you've got it set for every day and you're giving it just a little bit of drink, those roots are going to stay there. They know they're going to get the water. They know they don't need to search for it. So if you push your plants a little bit, put a little bit of pressure on them to search for their own source of water, that really will help develop a nice deep root system. So water them heavy, less often. Water them less when it's cool outside. Right now we're experiencing our early spring temperatures. It's cool, so you don't need to water that much. I just planted a raised bed garden a couple weeks ago, and it got a little bit started. It started a little bit early, but I haven't watered but once. I mean, I watered when I initially did it. I haven't watered once. We've had some rain. It's been cool at night. So watch your soil, watch the temperatures. When we start to warm up, you might need to increase your watering. Different plants need different amounts of water. And if you got a question, again, ask us. We know how to answer those questions on how much to water, how little to water. Okay, so that's kind of the 101 on watering. Water in the morning, not at night. Water the roots, not the leaves. Water deep, less often. Easiest way to kind of explain it and just kind of figure it out. And if you got questions, ask us. All right, so the next part is fertilizing. The plants are growing, we got them watered, everything's growing pretty well, but hey, we need to boost them a little bit. Vegetables, tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, zucchini, all these plants are producing a lot of food and they need a lot of energy for that. And we need to supply them with that. So of course we've got our McDonald Greenleaf, one of the best fertilizers for this area. We've got them in 2 different, the traditional formula, which is a 12-4-8, and then the organic, which is an 8-2-4. Really great solutions to fertilize anything in this area, but especially vegetables and herbs. Really, it's designed for Hampton Roads. So it's got a lot of trace elements, it's got a lot of those smaller nutrients that you don't get in fertilizers. If you see your 3 big numbers, 12-4-8 on this fertilizer, it's 12-4-8. That's nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. But there's a lot of smaller things. Boron, copper, zinc, magnesium, iron, all of these different things come in our soils come in our plant foods, and that's what's so important is when you feed your plants and you use these plant foods, you're getting a lot of beneficial micronutrients, those smaller things that you don't get in some of the big fertilizers. Again, if you want to be organic or you want to get a little more specific, we carry a complete line of Espoma fertilizers. This is garden tone, we've got tomato tone, plant tone, flower tone. We've got a lot of different types. These come in a wide range of sizes too, so you can get them in a 4-pound, 8-pound, 18-pound. So it depends on how much you're growing, how low you're growing. We've got a size for you. Completely organic, completely natural, completely safe. A little bit lighter formula, so it's a little bit more of a safe proof. If you accidentally dump the whole bag on a plant, we're not going to kill the plant. But it's a great formula. It's an easy one to use. We definitely are going to recommend garden tone, tomato tone, or McDonald green leaf. So fertilizing is important. These plants are producing throughout the entire year, or throughout the entire season, the summer season, so they need nutrients. They need a lot of nutrients, and we need to help them with that, and that's what fertilizer does. So you're going to fertilize a little bit heavier than you normally would. So a tree, shrub, landscape plant, perennial, those you're probably going to fertilize 2 or 3 times a year throughout the entire year. Annuals, the ones that bloom, petunias, marigolds, million bells, all those different types of things, those are going to need a little bit more fertilizer because they're putting a lot of energy into producing those blooms constantly for you. So again, those are going to need a little bit. Same with your food, same with your edible plants. They need a fair amount of fertilizer. So typically in the ground, we're going to fertilize somewhere around every 3 to 4 to 5 weeks with a granular fertilizer. And if you're using a liquid fertilizer, it's going to go a little bit faster through the soil. And so there you're probably every 2 to 3 weeks. But this you're going to fertilize once a month, basically. Very easy to remember. Go out there, fertilize. Put it on a calendar. Put it on your phone. Say, hey, I just fertilized. Remind me in a month to fertilize again. And then go out there and fertilize. It needs it. They need fertilizer, plant food all season long. So it's very important to continue to use this throughout the season. Now in a pot, in a container, it's got drain holes. And it's a looser soil, it's a potting soil, so things are going to work its way down through that pot a little bit quicker. So you might have to fertilize a little bit more. So there you're probably every 2 to 3 weeks with a granular fertilizer. Now let's talk about Biotone Starter, one of our new favorite products. Biotone Starter Fertilizer is a great starter fertilizer. Gets your plants kind of going real quick, but then what's really awesome about this is the beneficial bacteria and the mycorrhizae. You're going to hear a lot about this in the coming years. This is super, super important to help establish the root system of a plant, any plant that you're planting, whether it be a tree, shrub, perennial, annual, edible. Definitely use this. It's an awesome added step. You put this right around the root system when you plant, and then you've got your starter fertilizer benefits in it, so it's a root stimulator. So you don't need to use the root stimulator anymore. You can just use Biotone Starter. And then you get the beneficial added benefits of mycorrhizae and beneficial bacteria, which are small microorganisms that are going to attach themselves to the root system of the plant. And they do kind of a symbiotic relationship of sharing of salts and sugars and help each other out. And so the mycorrhizae get a benefit from it. The plant gets a bigger root system as the mycorrhizae go out there and help pull nutrients in. So super, super beneficial, forms a symbiotic relationship with the plant through the entire growing season. It's an awesome added step. If you've ever used a root stimulator, you know the benefits of that. You're going to get that with Biotone Starter, but you're also going to get all these microorganisms that are so important in organic gardening these days. Very, very great product. One of our favorite products. You're going to see a lot of this around the stores. It's available in all of our stores and all of our markets. So check out Biotone Starter. Try it. It's awesome. Okay, so that's fertilizing. Pretty simple. Just remember to do it and keep doing it throughout the season. These plants are using a lot of energy to produce food for you, so keep thinking about that and keep fertilizing throughout the season. All right, so now what to grow? A lot of people want to know, what do I grow in this area? You can grow a lot of things. We have actually a great area to grow it. We get hot in the summer, but that's about the only issue. We've got a couple crop seasons that we'll talk about here, but right now, as we enter into the early spring part, and we're starting to plant our vegetable gardens, right now we're typically talking about tomatoes, peppers, squash, zucchini, okra, let's see what else, cucumbers, beans, snap peas, all of those different types of things. That's what a lot of people are growing right now. And then we'll talk about fruits too, because it's a great time to plant some fruits and different berries and stuff. But those are kind of the mainstay vegetables that people are growing. Herbs, a lot of people use them. They're great in containers. You can keep them close to your house. My best advice for herbs is use them or lose them. You want to cut them. They're used to being cut. So rosemary, thyme, parsley, oregano, sage. The list goes on. So cilantro, mint. There's a ton of different types of herbs. Think again about what do you actually use and use those to grow. Great in pots, great in raised beds, great right in the ground. So great options there as well. So that's kind of what we're thinking about right now is our tomatoes, our squash, our zucchinis, those summer crop of vegetables. Now, if you're looking to do lettuce, spinach, beets, these are called cole crops. That's C-O-L-E, cole crops. A lot of people call them cold crops. That's fine. That's when we plant them, is when it's a little bit chillier. So right now, you can still get a little crop of that. When I was talking about seeds versus plants earlier, lettuce, spinach, very easy to grow from seed. You can direct sow it right now. So if you're thinking about, a lot of times for cucumbers, we'll jump around here. Cucumbers, I like to plant a couple stages of cucumbers because typically you're going to get bumper crop with cucumbers. You're going to get that big kind of explosion of, oh man, I've got a bunch of cucumbers, and then sometimes they'll fizzle off on you. That's okay. So I like to plant multiple cucumbers every 2 to 3 weeks. And so what I like to do now is grow some spinach and lettuce. It's very easy. It grows very quickly. You can pick it. You get a nice little month of harvest, month and a half of harvest time. Once it gets too hot in this area, once we start to get really, good nighttime temperatures above 60, 65 degrees consistently, then those lettuces are going to bolt. And what bolting means is it flowers. Doesn't actually really ruin the taste of the plant. It just is going to flower instead of producing leaves. You want the leaves to eat. That's what spinach and lettuce is all about, is eating the leaves. But if it's flowering, if it's just constantly flowering, you're not going to get new leaf production. And then it's kind of over for the season. So if you want to do spinach, lettuce, beets, carrots, turnips, radishes, whole slew of those, great crop for the spring, early spring season, but amazing for the fall. One tricky thing about Hampton Roads here is you're never going to grow in your garden a complete salad necessarily. So you're never going to go out there and get your lettuce, your onions, your tomatoes, your cucumbers, and all those things and be able to make a salad. Because unfortunately in our area, we don't have we've got those fluctuations in temperatures. We get real hot in the summer, we get cool in the fall and spring. So you can't always get a complete salad. But when the settlers landed here in Jamestown, that's what they survived on, was beets and turnips and carrots. We have a great cool spring and fall season to grow those types of root vegetables, those cold crops, lettuces and spinach, collards, kale. There's a huge list. So think about those in your planning process. When we talk about planning, think about some of those cold crops that you can do now while you're continuing to plan. They don't take up a lot of space. You can do them in a pot, container, anything. And so think about those, and then again, use them in the fall. It's a great fall crop. So when we get through kind of August into September, and your tomatoes and peppers are kind of done, and you're kind of over, you're ready to move on to the next one, think about all of those crops that you can do as well. Instead of just leaving your bed dormant throughout the year, not using them, not using your pots, not using your earth box, use them. Grow lots of different things that you can grow in that time of the year. So always kind of, again, that planning process. Okay, so what else? Fruits and berries. Lots of different types of fruits and berries. We've got blueberries, we've got blackberries, we've got raspberries. There's lots of different choices out there of different types of berries. Blueberries, of course, are one of my favorite. They're very easy to grow. You can get a couple different varieties. We've got some smaller varieties that are dwarfs, that are self-pollinating, so you only need one. If you want to grow one in a pot, they actually make a pretty little bush by themselves. So if you can see this one right here, really pretty color. You got this kind of really nice fall color that it's still got the winter color, and then it's going to get bright green with almost a bluish hue in the summer, and then it's going to produce blueberries. And they produce pretty reliably, and they're nice because you can grow them in a small pot, and they can grow throughout the year. You can also grow them in the ground. You can grow those in the ground. You can grow the small dwarf varieties in the ground. You can also grow rabbit eye varieties, which if you want blueberries and you've got space, those are the way to go. They get 6 by 6, 7 by 7, 8 by 8. They get real big, but you're going to get a huge crop. Now, you do need 2 different varieties of those. So a lot of times we got Climax, Premier, Tiff Blue. There's a couple different other varieties, but you want to do 2 different varieties so that they cross-pollinate so that you'll get berries. If you just plant one Climax blueberry, you're probably not going to get any unless your neighbor's got some. But that's what you need is 2 different varieties to help cross-pollinate. Those are big bushes. They're going to produce a lot for you. But then we've got a lot of smaller ones, Sunshine Blue, Blueberry. There's a lot of different varieties out there. Top Hat, world's largest strawberry or world's largest blueberry. There's a lot of small dwarf styles that are self-pollinating. You can just do one. Strawberries, one of my favorites. I love to grow strawberries. The kids love them. Everybody of all ages love them. So strawberries are very, very easy to grow. Again, a lot of people grow them in pots because they do spread. So if you're going to plant them in the ground, beware that they do spread. I think it makes a very nice ground cover. So if you're going to use them outside, I definitely recommend putting them in the ground. That's perfectly fine. They spread, they form a nice ground cover. They're going to change colors throughout the year. So when we get into the fall time frame, the leaves are going to be real pretty. There's a couple different varieties of strawberries out there. We carry a lot of different ones. There's June bearing and ever bearing. So that's kind of the most important two distinctions there. June bearing can produce a lot of strawberries, and then they're going to stop around June. So you're going to get a lot of strawberries kind of early in the season. They're going to continue to produce them in June. They kind of shut down. That's okay though, because there's a lot of really good varieties in there of June bearing varieties. Then there's everbearing. Everbearing don't produce as heavily, but they produce consistently throughout the entire growing season. So strawberries, great option. Kids love them. Grow them in pots, strawberry pots, earth boxes, containers, in the ground. Lots of versatility there, but definitely try some strawberries. They're awesome. And then what else? So fig trees. One of my favorites, I brought this in here, I don't know if you can really see it, it's just leafing out. So if you have a fig in your yard, you're probably just noticing that it's budding up. But figs are super, super easy to grow. They have very little disease and insect issues. They're very, very easy to grow. They love our climate here. They produce heavily year after year. They grow fairly quickly. They get a manageable size, so they're only going to get 10, 12, 15 feet high and wide. Not very big, really pretty tree. You know, they can be very multi-trunked. As you can see here, we got a bunch of trunks. They can be bushy. You can also take all those off and grow it as a tree with a single trunk and then a nice crown on top. Depends on how you want to grow it. But it's a really pretty tree. It's a big self-pollinating. You only need one. I definitely recommend them. Brown turkey is one of my favorites. Celeste is another good variety. We carry those year-round here. Figs are awesome. Very, very easy. If you've got a little bit of space, try a fig. I definitely recommend it. They're going to fruit probably late summer into fall. Very easy to go pick. It's like candy right off a tree. So much fun. So easy. I mean, success proof. You're going to be successful with a fig. Try one if you got space. I love them. And then, of course, the raspberries, blackberries. There's a lot of different choices in those as well. So that's kind of some of our favorites right there. Let me talk a little bit about citrus. So citrus, if you're growing indoors, let's say you live in a condo or you've got a smaller space, you don't have much yard space, but you want to grow something. This is citrus. We've got a lot of them. We've got Myers lemons. They're awesome. Limes, calamundans. So those are kind of the three that we consistently have. Calamundans are awesome. You just pick them right off the tree and eat them. Lemons and limes take a little bit longer to produce, but so beneficial to have them around the house. They help, relieve stress indoors. So if you're working at home and you've got a sunny spot, this is a great thing to put inside. It's a really pretty plant. When it blooms, they're super, super fragrant, real easy to grow. You can take them outside for a summer vacation. So you can grow them. You cannot plant citrus outdoors in Hampton Roads, unfortunately. The winters will get them. So when our nighttime temperatures get down to about 40, 45 degrees at night, you want to bring them back in. Remember the frost dates, April 15th, November 15th. Those are kind of when you can take it out for a summer vacation and let it grow and get big, and then you can bring it back inside. So citrus, great option to grow indoors. So we've got lots of those. You can choose from a couple different types, lemons, limes, and calamundans. Real easy to grow, super fragrant bloom. One of my favorite plants to grow indoors. You can take them outside during the summer. Just another great edible plant that you can grow here in Hampton Roads. So that kind of covers a majority of the list of what we can grow. Now I'll talk a little bit about those summer vegetables real quick just to kind of run down the major list of them so you have a little bit more information. Tomatoes, check your tag. It'll tell you what it does. Indeterminate, determinate. So indeterminate are going to continue to grow and continue to produce fruit, whereas determinate kind of get that big bumper crop and then they kind of stop. Cherry tomatoes, I definitely recommend. Cherry tomatoes are going to give you a large production throughout the entire year. They're very easy to grow. They do get big, typically. There's a couple dwarf varieties, but cherry tomatoes, I definitely recommend trying some of those. Super Sweet 100 or Sun Gold are my two favorite varieties. Very easy to grow, and get lots of cherries. The kids love them. Everybody loves them. There's nothing more fun than going out in the garden and picking a couple cherry tomatoes as you go and work through the yard and weed your flower beds or weed your vegetable garden. So there's a couple of tomatoes that I definitely recommend. Better Boy is a reliable, normal size tomato, kind of baseball size or slightly smaller. And you're going to get a nice salad slicing tomato there. You're not going to get your huge hamburger slice, but you're going to get a nice sized tomato. And they're very reliable, and they continue to produce throughout the year. Then you've got your heirloom varieties, Mr. Stripey, Mortgage Lifter, Brandywine. They're fun. They're kind of that different taste. They've got different looks. They're not that perfect with a little round tomato, but they're really, really fun. They're easy. There's a lot of different varieties of heirloom tomatoes out there. And then you've got your big guys. Definitely try a couple big guys. When you get one, they're huge. They're awesome. Whopper, Beefmaster, Big Beef, Big Boy. There's a lot of different choices in those as well, so try a couple of those. Typically, you're not going to get a huge production with those, but you can get a lot of tomatoes. And if you're successful with them, there's nothing more rewarding than cutting a tomato and being able to cover your entire hamburger with one slice of a tomato. So great on BLTs, lots of those. Romas are very easy. Grape tomatoes are easy. So you got lots of choices there with tomatoes. Squash, and so real quick, let me tell you the size of a tomato plant, because that does help with your planting process. Tomatoes typically are going to get somewhere between 4 to 6 feet high and about 2 to 3 feet wide. They grow very somewhat columnar. Tomato cages work great when trying to kind of contain them from falling over. So we got lots of tomato cages. They're really easy. You stick them in the ground. We've also got a new one called the Alt Tomato, which is a little bit more versatile because it gives you these clips that you can clip on to make it grow with the tomato, so you can actually keep clipping and keep going higher and higher. So these are really easy to use. So when staking your tomatoes or peppers or cucumbers, you can use those. But that's kind of the size of a tomato plant. Now there's some dwarf varieties that you can grow in pots. So if you want to grow in a container, we've got patio tomatoes and husky red cherries and lots of different types of those smaller dwarf potatoes that will stay a little bit shorter and squattier, but still produce a lot of fruit for you, a lot of tomatoes for you. Squash and zucchini get pretty big. Big plants, big leaves. There's nothing more fun than seeing those big, bright yellow flowers come out and then grow. And you get lots of squash and zucchini. So they get pretty good size. You're talking somewhere between a 2x2, 3x3 space for those plants. So give them space to grow. We're always talking about space and location and planting. Think about how big they're going to grow. Cucumbers, most of them are going to be vining and trellis. So you can grow them on a tomato cage. Pretty easy to do on a tomato cage. Provide a little bit of a trellis, a little bit of support. You can use a couple pieces of bamboo, put a little bit of twine in between. Lots of different options. We got trellis netting, lots of different options to help support your cucumbers. That does keep them off the ground, keeps them in a little bit more of a confined space, but cucumbers are very easy to grow. One of our favorite varieties is, of course, purpless. Purpless has been grown for many, many years. They call them purpless because they're the longer style English cucumbers. Don't have seeds in them, or not many. And they say seeds make you burp in cucumbers, so they call them burpless. So that's a great one. But we've got snackable ones. We've got the pickling cucumbers. So lots of different options there as well. Beans, pole beans, and bush beans. The difference there, pole beans are going to get 8, 10, 12 feet long runners on them. So be prepared for those. Have a trellis, have an arbor, have something for those to grow on, a fence that they can grow on. Build with a couple stakes, look around your house. We're at our homes, we're cleaning out our garages anyways, so look for some things that you can use. You can use branches, you can use sticks, you can use some old wood that you've used, put some stakes in the ground, put some twine, and you grow your pole beans. Bush beans, so pole beans are going to produce the entire season. Bush beans usually do that bumper crop. They're going to produce a lot real quick, but so you might consider staggering a couple of those. Again, good option for seeds is bush beans because you might want a couple different crops throughout the year. But bush beans are very easy. You don't need any kind of support system. They just grow very low, about 1 to 2 feet high, and you go out there and pick and harvest, very easy to grow. Snap peas are vine again, so you're going to get a trellis, a support system for those as well. Peppers are great. They don't get very, very big, so they're only going to get somewhere between 2 to 3 feet high and wide, so they don't need a huge amount of space either. And they're going to produce what I always tell people with peppers to be successful. Give them the most amount of sunlight that you can give them and give them a little bit of time, especially your red, orange, yellow varieties. They're going to come out green. You can eat them while they're green. So if they're size that you want and you want to take them, eat them. But if you want them to really color up, you got to leave them on there for a little bit more of an extended period of time. And be patient with peppers. They're a little bit longer to maturity, so just be patient. You're going to get lots of tomatoes and cucumbers, squash, zucchini very early, but be patient with your peppers. They just need a little bit more heat. They need the soil temperature to rise, and then you've got those ready to go. So those are kind of the most important ones that I can think of. There's lots of different things to choose from. So many different options, so many different locations to grow in. Raised beds, containers, earth boxes, in the ground, right directly in the ground. There's so many different choices. Berries, fruit trees. I mean, there's a list of fruit trees that we didn't even touch on. Cherry trees, apple trees, lots of different things that you could do in this area. Ask us questions. That's what we're here for. We want to help you with your soil, your fertilizer, your plants, whatever it might be that you have questions on. When it comes to edible gardening, we're here to help. There's so much fun. There's nothing better than eating from your own yard. There's nothing more rewarding. And right now, when we're trying to de-stress and get out in the yard and be healthy and be active and get some exercise, go work in the garden. It's a great time to do that. It's very easy. We'll help you be successful. And we hope you enjoyed this online seminar on growing your own food. So many different choices. So I'm going to walk around the table here. I'm going to come and try and answer the questions because I can see there's a couple over there. So give me a sec. All right, so let me just adjust my screen and see if I can see. Amanda, you said you mentioned perlite for in-ground planting and soil amendments. How much for, let's say, a 10 by 10 plot in ground? And what's the most efficient, affordable way to buy that in bulk? Thanks. Okay, so perlite, we carry in two different sizes. We carry it in an 8-quart bag, which is a small one for planting a few plants, but then we carry it in a 4 cubic foot bag, which is a very big bag. So that's gonna do a 10 by 10 area, most likely, pretty well. We've got the measurements, I can't remember them off the top of my head, but that's 100 square feet. A 4 cubic foot bag of perlite should cover that easily, about an inch deep, which means just working it into the soil. That's the best way to get it in bulk, is to buy a 4 cubic foot bag. It's $19.99. You can get it at both of our year-round locations. So we definitely have big bags of that, as well as vermiculite. I didn't talk a lot about vermiculite, but vermiculite has similar qualities to perlite, so something that you might consider there as well. But perlite is a little bit less expensive than vermiculite and does the exact same thing. I love perlite. That's what I use. It really helps in that clay soil. It's going to help break up the soil. Vermiculite holds a little bit more moisture in, which typically we don't want with clay. We want to allow the nutrients and the moisture to go down through the soil. So yes, 8-quart bag for small areas, small projects. Then we've got the big 4 cubic foot bag that will work for your situation. So thank you for the question. What is the best solution for keeping the squirrels out? Thank you, Susan. So yeah, that is a difficult one. You can try the netting and all the different things. Very, very difficult. Somehow they're resilient little animals, aren't they? I know from birding and from growing vegetable garden, they just keep on trying to come after you, and eventually they'll figure out a way in there. So there is hot pepper wax, and there is some repellents that you can spray on the plant. I know it's not the best solution, but it's the only solution really, other than trying to net or completely surround the area with something that the squirrels can't get past. So we recommend, we do have netting. Netting works, but like I said, somehow they always figure out a way in. So I love the sprays. Hot pepper wax is completely safe, completely organic. I've got other repellents that are completely organic. You can put it as a granular spread around, or you can spray it directly on your edible plants. Just wash off your plants. Unfortunately, we do have a great one that's systemic, but again, you don't want to use that on your edible plants because it's going to go into the system of the plant. But there's a couple different options that we carry, and we carry lots of different ones. So what I always tell people is, they always say, why do you have 3 different squirrel repellents? Well, it's because use one and then get a different product the second time, because sometimes they can get used to that spray or that smell that you're using. A lot of them are cinnamon oil, clove oil, garlic oil, those types of fragrances. We're really, they'll get used to it. So going to hot pepper wax and then going back to a fragrance one, and you can just come in and check out those, and we can help you pick out the right one for you. When do you prune blueberry bushes? Great question. So you typically are going to prune anything that blooms in the spring. So blueberries bloom right in the spring. So what you want to do is typically after you harvest your blueberries, so after you've gotten all the blueberries off, then you go and you do your pruning then. Because what's going to happen is it's going to produce all that new growth the rest of the growing season, and then that's what it's going to bloom on next year. If you do it in the middle of the winter, you're going to severely reduce your blooming capacity because it's not only, but it will bloom on new wood and old wood, but you're going to get the most amount of blueberries by leaving the most amount of growth on. So you really want it to regrow. So it's kind of like a hydrangea. Hydrangeas are kind of tricky to prune. Blueberries, you want to just wait till you harvest all your blueberries, go out there, give it a prune, fertilize it, maybe remulch it if you haven't mulched it, check your pH, they like a low pH, and then you should be good to go. And then all that new growth that it's going to put off through the rest of the growing season into the fall is going to be what you're going to get all your blueberries on next year. So hopefully that helps you out. Amanda said, thanks a million, very helpful. Well, thanks for coming. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So I think that's all I've got. You're welcome, Susan. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for coming. I hope you enjoyed it. I know that was like an hour long about growing your own food, but it's such a fun topic to talk about. So I hope you enjoyed it. Check out, we're going to be doing more. So check us out. We're here to help. We know you're kind of stuck at home, and we want to be here to help. And this is the best way that we think we can do that, is to help continue to educate and talk about all the different things that keep you active, keep you outside, keep you healthy, and de-stress you a little bit. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. We'll be here Friday. So check us out for another great online seminar. Thanks again for joining. Bye, everybody.